everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again I'm coming to you with another range report. And in today's range report we have something very special and iconic. This is considered to be the best production revolver ever made, and some people call it the Rolls-Royce of Colt revolvers. Of course, we are talking about the Colt Python, a double-action, single-action revolver chambered in .357 Magnum. This is one of the older examples, made in 1980. It is finished in the famous Colt Royal Blue. It has a 4-inch barrel, which I think is the perfect barrel length for a revolver like this. Anything shorter, I just don't shoot it very well. And anything longer, it just becomes a little bit front heavy. And as I mentioned, this is a little bit nostalgic for me because I used to own a Colt Python, and I remember the very first time I ever fired one, and I was blown away with how accurate it was for me. These guns were hand fit. The time that went into the production meant they came with a very steep price point. And even today, the older ones are the most collectible, they're very sought after, and the prices just continue to go through the roof. And they're known to have simply the best triggers of any revolver. And I just can't wait to get this to the range, shoot it, and of course, share all of the footage with you and talk about my experiences. But before we go to the range, I always want to thank the people that make these videos possible. First and foremost is the owner of this very beautiful revolver. He's a local fan and subscriber, and his name is Jack. In fact, he's the second person named Jack that lends guns to the channel, so I affectionately call him Jack number 2. So thank you, Jack. I always want to thank my Patreons because through their monthly donations and support, they help keep the lights on around here, and I couldn't do this without their support. And if you guys want to join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month and get to see all of these videos early, there is a link in the description below. And as always, I want to thank my primary sponsor who always provides all of the ammunition for these range reports, thus making them financially feasible for me, my good friend Mark from Brownworks. And I know today we are looking at and reviewing a classic revolver, a gun made of steel and wood. And if you like guns like this, you probably have a collection of firearms that take wood panel grips, such as 1911s, Beretta 92s, CZ75s, or Browning High Powers, just to name a few. And you might be in the market for a set of grips that's going to make your gun unique and one of a kind. Well, I have the perfect grip company for you. Brownworks. Brownworks is a custom grip company making a wide variety of grips for a wide variety of firearms out of a wide variety of exotic woods and materials. Mark is an artist and he is a craftsman, and he is always adding to his line of grips, and you guys can put on custom logos, custom engravings, custom textures. Mark can finish these grips in a wide variety of colors. He can even apply exotic materials like snakeskin and alligator skin to make these grips unique and one of a kind. So I'm going to put a link to his website in the comments section below, as well as a coupon code for 10% off your first order. I'm going to ask you guys to go over there and see everything he has to offer. And when you place that order for your set of custom grips, please tell Mark the Texas Gun Vault sent you. All right, so once again, let's talk about the revolver we have on the table today, the Colt Python. And this example, once again, was made in 1980. But they made these revolvers between 1955 and 2005, and then they have recently reintroduced them starting in 2020. It's chambered in .357 Magnum, but of course you can shoot .38 Special through them. It is a double-action, single-action revolver, and it's based off of the Colt I-frame. This has a 4-inch barrel finished in the Royal Blue from Colt, which I said is kind of iconic and almost perfect. And this gun I've always found to be fascinating because if you're a fan of revolvers, and you've probably shot or owned Smith & Wessons, they're very ubiquitous. The one thing I've always found fascinating about Colts is they're pretty much the exact opposite manual of arms as Smith & Wesson. Where on Smith & Wessons, the cylinder release, you push forward. With Colts, you pull back. And when it comes to the cylinder, it rotates in the opposite direction as a Smith & Wesson. I've always kind of found that to be fascinating. I don't know the evolution of revolvers and how that came to be, but I've always found it odd that kind of the two big competitors in the early 20th century when it came to revolvers had vastly different mechanisms. And that's just something to note if you ever get to handle a Colt versus a Smith & Wesson. But now let's talk about the things that I like and don't like about this revolver. And as always, I want to start with the positive first. And the first thing I love about this gun, you already know. It's a Colt. And the Python, made by Colt, has such an iconic reputation. These things were hand fit. They're virtually handmade. They were the premium gun in Colt's lineup. And they are just sought after by collectors. They're absolutely gorgeous. Let's talk about the aesthetics. One of the iconic things about the Pythons is this rib on top of the barrel. They have vents in them, and depending on the barrel length, you'll have different numbers of vents. Everyone thinks that is just a very gorgeous feature. It makes the gun feel very, very robust. I do like Colt revolver grips a lot. I find them to be a little bit more ergonomic for me than Smith & Wesson revolver grips. I don't know if it's the angle or the size, but the grips on this and the angle of the grip is absolutely perfect for me when I shoot a revolver. Now, I'm mainly a semi-auto guy, so I'm a little bit sensitive when it comes to revolver grips. They have to be just right for me to shoot them well. And as I mentioned, these guns were hand fit. And the one thing everybody talks about when it comes to these is the trigger. And of course, we have to test this trigger out in both double action and single action. It's just known to be one of the best ever made. So I'm gonna go ahead and adjust the camera. I'm gonna get out the Lyman trigger pull weight gauge, and I wanna test this trigger out and see what it's all about before taking it to the range. So as I mentioned, I remember the very first time I ever shot a Colt Python, and I was blown away by how it felt in my hand, how it shot, and most importantly, how nice the trigger was. So I want to test that out and see what this example actually measures at. Now, I know some people are going to tell me you shouldn't dry fire this. However, I have gone online and double checked a ton of resources, and a lot of people say these are perfectly fine to dry fire. They do have a transfer bar. You just don't want to dry fire it continuously for a long period of time, but we're only going to test it a few times here, so I think we're going to be absolutely safe. So of course, let me go ahead and safety check the firearm, make sure there is no ammunition in the cylinder, and it looks like we are good. So let's start off with the double action pull. Now, the double action is a very smooth take-up, and let's see what it measures at. Many times double action revolvers go off the scale, but this one is measuring at 8 pounds, 6.4 ounces. Our next pull, 7 pounds, 7.8 ounces. Eight pounds, 6.3 ounces. 7 pounds, 11.9 ounces. And finally, we have 8 pounds, 5.4 ounces, which gives us an average of 8 pounds, 1.2 ounces. And for a double action revolver, that is perfect. That's in that sweet spot. It's definitely heavy, but you are dealing with a double action revolver pull. And most of the time, as I said, revolvers, they will actually go beyond what this gauge can measure. So to even be able to measure this is awesome. And I can tell you the pull on that is so smooth. But now let's try this in single action. And let me go ahead and clear the average out, and let's test this. 3 pounds, 14.3 ounces. Three pounds, 11.6 ounces. 3 pounds, 12.2 ounces. 3 pounds, 12.2 ounces. And finally, we have 3 pounds, 13.0 ounces, which gives us an average of 3 pounds, 12.7 ounces. For a single action trigger, that's okay. I think I would want it a little bit lighter, something in about the 3 pounds, 5 ounce range, but I can take this. But the double action pull is absolutely exceptional for what it is. And that's what this trigger is all about and why people love this revolver. But now I want to talk about a couple things about this revolver that I don't like. Actually, I'm just kidding. There's nothing about this revolver that I don't like. Having it here on the workbench, it's absolutely gorgeous and beautiful, and I can't say a negative thing about it. So let's just go to the range, let's shoot it, and let's see how I do. Of course, I will always start off with the target at 7 yards. I'm going to shoot 38 special through it first, then 357 Magnum to see if there's any difference. Just see how accurate it is for me, how it handles recoil, and how nice this trigger is. So let's get to the range. Now I was shooting that single action, and don't worry, I will shoot this double action and test that in just a few minutes. But I want to talk about how this gun shoots first. It feels great in my hand. It manages the 357 recoil really well, and I think a lot of that has to do with the shape of the grip. I'm also really happy with its accuracy. I know some of you are going to say, that wasn't a very good group, but I'm telling you, for me shooting a revolver, that's pretty darn good. I usually just don't shoot revolvers well. I'm a semi-auto guy. I can definitely appreciate the mechanics and the beauty of these guns, but I'm just more at home with semi-autos. And I can tell you, this trigger is absolutely fantastic. And when you shoot this gun, you feel the quality. It's really hard to explain. It's like drinking a fine vintage wine. Yeah, there's some wines you can just chug, and there's some revolvers you just shoot to have fun with, and then there's some you shoot to enjoy. And that's what this is. You just feel that quality. All right, so now let's double the distance of this target. I'm going to shoot 38 special and 357 Magnum again. I'm going to shoot 38 special on the left, 357 Magnum on the right. 2 more cylinders downrange, see what happens to my group, and if I discover anything else about this gun that I like or don't like, and I'll report back to you. And once again for me, that's okay accuracy with a revolver. I am noticing though that 357 Magnum is grouping a little bit higher than the 38 Special. It was more pronounced at the closer distance, but I'm having to adjust for that. But so far, it's performing great. All right, so now I want to see what the best group I can get out of this gun is. I'm going to set the target at 25 yards and I'm going to shoot this from the bench. I'm going to try to take as much of the human element out of the equation as possible, and I'm only going to shoot 357 Magnum through it this time. So 2 cylinders of 357 Magnum, 25 yards. I'm going to take my time and see how accurate I can shoot this iconic revolver. And wow, for me at 25 yards with a revolver, that's a pretty darn good group. And I'm going to take that every day of the week. I couldn't even tell where the projectiles were hitting the target at that distance, but that just goes to show how accurate this revolver is. And if you're really a revolver shooter, you're gonna shoot this absolutely amazing. And it reminds me a lot about the very first time I ever shot a Colt Python. I could feel the quality and I shot it so well as compared to everything else I had ever shot before. So it's really cool to be able to duplicate that experience once more. All right, so the next test I want to do is, of course, the double action test. The double action pull on this is so smooth, and I'm kind of wondering if it's like SIG pistols, where I often shoot them better in double action than I do single action. And even though the pull is heavier, I can just group them better. So let's go back to the range. Let's shoot 38 Special and 357 Magnum through this double action and just see how I do. And at this distance, I'm shooting it so much better in double action than I was in single action. And that's just because this trigger is so smooth and the break is so predictable. And you can just tell that the engineering that went into this, the build of this gun, is just so superior to so many other revolvers. It's just one of those things you have to experience. Now, normally the next test in these range reports I do is a shoot fast test and see if I can reload the gun fast and is the gun point shootable. However, in this range report, I'm going to forego that because the mechanics of these guns can be a little bit on the delicate side, and this is just a classic gun that you own to look at, to enjoy. You don't really own one of these to use as a home defense weapon or to carry. Now, you definitely can, but this is not my revolver and I would not want to risk damaging it. For me, this is just a high-end gun that is like a fine vintage wine, as I mentioned. You just want to enjoy it, and that is definitely what I did. So what are my final thoughts on the iconic Colt Python in 357 Magnum? Well, this thing shoots fantastic. One of the nicest shooting 357 Magnum revolvers I have ever reviewed. In the 4-inch barrel configuration, it is extremely well balanced. The trigger is amazing, both in single action and double action. I think the double action is a little bit nicer. I really like how well it manages 357 Magnum recoil. I really like the shape of these grips. It is finished absolutely beautifully. There is not a flaw on that. It is just an amazing revolver. Now, I have never shot or reviewed one of the new ones. I have heard some of them have some problems and they are manufactured a little bit different than these old ones. But if you ever get a chance to shoot one of these old ones, you need to take that opportunity because you will understand what I'm saying. You just feel the quality in this build. So as you can see, I have nothing negative to say at all about this fantastic gun. So on my star system, what am I going to give the Colt Python? Well, yeah, 5 out of 5 stars. And once again, it was kind of a nostalgia trip for me because I remember my first time shooting a Colt Python about 15 years ago and being so amazed by it. And shooting it today has reminded me of how awesome these revolvers are. So let me know in the comments section below, do you own a Colt Python? Have you ever shot a Colt Python? What do you think? And do you think they're worth the money that people want for them today? So, as always, thanks for watching. And now normally the next test that I do is a quick shooting and quick magazine change test or defensive use test, and and the release is so predictable, and the break is so predictable. But if you ever get a chance to shoot one of the old Pythons, make sure you...